You don't hit the ball with your backswing, but it really does help if you've got a good one. In this video, I'm going to explain some common faults that I see in players' backswings and what a good backswing looks like. As a golfer, you've got to understand that a good backswing is a platform on which a good downswing is built from. You can make any sort of backswing work if you're skilled and coordinated enough, but having a correct backswing makes the downswing much easier. I'm familiar with the argument that if you watch golf on TV, you're going to see all different kinds of backswings. No one swings it the same, but what they all do is they have a very similar impact and a very similar downswing. Now, those guys are like the best in the world. They're like freaks of nature. We as like amateur golfers, mid-handicappers, we cannot at all pair ourselves as similar to them, unfortunately, as much as it'd be nice if you were. So what we have to do is actually have a more correct technique, because we're going to practice less than they are. So we've got something that we can rely upon on the golf course. If you're making bad backswings, you're always going to have to compensate a lot in the downswing, which those compensations are going to be often very hard to time consistently, or they're just going to produce weaker, poor golf shots. It makes far more sense to try and have a good backswing so that you give yourself the best chance to make a better downswing, which is going to allow you to hit the ball further and more consistently. I've already talked in a previous video about what makes a good takeaway and how to get your swing started properly, so if you've not seen that, go check that out. If I was any good at editing, I'd be able to link somewhere around here for you to go view that, but we'll see if I can figure that out. If not, you're going to have to go find it yourself. I'm not really going to cover the takeaway. I'm just going to talk about the backswing faults that I think are like the most common that I see teaching golf. So first main fault that I see a lot is golfers swaying their hips to the right too much. This generally comes from a poor understanding of what weight transfer is, and anytime a golfer moves their hips too much away from the target, then they're going to really struggle to get their pressure where it needs to be in order to strike the ball consistently. So that the first red flag of your golf swing is a hip sway. Another one that I see causing lots of problems are golfers who lift their arms up too much. So as they're taking the club away and sort of getting to the top of their backswing, their arms are moving up too much rather than around. I think this is, again, it comes from a misunderstanding of what width is and actually what the hands are, where the hands should go in the swing. People sort of see players like Dustin Johnson or Justin Thomas, these players who hit the ball miles from a high hands position, and think that that is going to maybe give them some more speed. And yes, although maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it is going to make things harder to get the club back on line coming down. Something else that's very common, who halfway back has the club shaft too flat. This one's a little bit trickier, but this is one that we see really commonly from slicers or players who come over the top, that you sort of see that the shaft's really flat, they round up and then they come over. The momentum of the head is sort of swinging this way instead of shallowing. So if you're one of those players who's always coming over the top, you know, you might want to have a look at that halfway back position to see where is that shaft pointing. Is it down inside the ball or is it a long way outside the ball? And finally, the fourth big thing that I see with the amateur golfers are making in their backswing is not turning enough or not having enough shoulder turn. We know we want the shoulders to go beyond 90 degrees of turn, so getting that left shoulder back behind the golf ball, but do you really understand how to do that and what creates that? So I think we all get a bit stuck in this idea that was around in the late 90s where we're trying to restrict that hip turn to keep things more solid or something, but all that really did was actually stop us making bigger turns and making our swing shorter, making them slower, and not allowing us to get the club behind enough to be able to hit a draw. So we definitely want to make a bigger turn. If you're not turning to 90 degrees, then you really need to work on that. Just quickly, whilst I've still got your attention, thank you very much for supporting me thus far. I hope you're enjoying the videos. I've had quite a good reception actually. I'm pleased with the views and how we're growing, but still a lot of you are not subscribing for some reason. I don't know why that is. You seem to be watching the videos but not subscribing. You're going to miss out on all this excellent content I'm producing. So if you could do me a favour, subscribe, like the video, continue to support me. It really helps me grow. I appreciate the time. So thank you. When I'm in a lesson and I'm looking to start building a good backswing with a player, I'm really looking for 4 different things. I'm just going to explain those and explain why I want them. The first thing I want is a centered hip turn. So as we move into the backswing, yes, we're going to transfer our weight, but as we get to the top of the swing, our hips should be recentering or even moving ahead of where they started. Now what that does is it moves our weight forwards, which is going to allow us to hit the ball before the ground, stop chunking it or thinning it. And it's also going to get our body in a position where we've got a lot of room to swing down from the inside. If I'm early weight shifted onto my front foot, then I've got all this space here to swing the club down into, where if I'm a late weight transfer person, then I'm stuck on my right side. There's not as much room here to swing my arms down into, and I'm usually going to swing over the top. Just centered hip turns the first thing. Second thing is I'm really a massive fan of depth of the hands halfway back. So a checkpoint I sort of look for generally with sort of mid to high handicappers is, are your hands in line with your bicep halfway back? If people are moving into that position, they're generally going to end up in a position at the top where they've got enough depth, the club's in a good place, they've turned far enough. It's very hard to get your hands back there if you're not turning. So often just having people think about getting appropriate hand depth halfway back is enough to get them to make a full turn. If I don't get my hands back, or if I don't make a full turn, it becomes very hard to get that depth. It looks awkward, where if I turn my body properly, bigger hip turn, bigger shoulder turn, it's actually really easy to get my hands back there, and that gets me in a nice strong position at the top. The third thing I'm always looking for with players is where's the shaft. I want you to sort of have that shaft pointed inside the ball somewhere in here. I'm not that picky about how steep or how shallow. If someone has the club steeper going back, it comes down a bit more shallow because the club head, the heaviest part of the club, is going to sort of move this way as you start to transition instead of that way when you start to transition. So if I go back flat and then transition, it's going to steepen. If I go back more upright and then transition, it's going to shallow. If you're a steep swinger, that's a good one for you. I'm going to look for hands in line with bicep and shaft pointing somewhere inside the ball is going to get us into a nice position at the top. And then the cherry on the cake of a good backswing is a good wrist angle and good club face alignment at the top. So all of this is everything I've just gone over is great, but if you've got a cupped wrist and an open face to the top, we're still going to have to do some sort of compensation on the way down to get the club back to square. So once we've got a centered hip turn, good hand depth, the right shaft pitch, and then a flat left wrist and a square face at the top, from there I actually think it's quite hard to make a bad downswing. I think from that position it doesn't really make any sense to swing over the top because there's so much room to swing down onto the inside. I don't often, it's very rare, or I can't actually remember a point where someone hits those 4 checkpoints and then comes over the top, because it just doesn't make sense to. We come over the top and make bad downswings as a result or reaction generally to something in the backswing. So if you hit those 4 checkpoints, your downswing is going to look a lot better and you're going to hit the ball much better. Okay, so I love a drill. I think drills are a great way for players to get a feel for some new positions whilst also swinging at the ball. I don't really like drills where you're not hitting balls or at least making full swings. So I'm not really sure they transition well into a golf swing. So anytime you've got a drill that you can hit a ball, I think that's a real win. So the first one I'm going to show you is for that centered hip turn and for that sequencing that I'm always rabbiting on social media about, and that's a step drill. Like I said, as we're sort of halfway back and getting to the top of our swing, our hips should actually be shifting to the left. So a drill I like is the step drill. What you're going to do is start with your feet together behind the ball. You're going to start the swing back, and then once your hands get above your belt, you're then going to step as you finish the backswing. And that's a really dynamic move. You're shifting your hips forward, you're loading your left side, you're creating that tension across your body as you stretch to the top of your swing, and then from there you can sort of just like really whip it through. This one takes a bit of sequencing, so if you're not a very well coordinated person, this is going to take a few goes to get right. I've seen some pretty wild attempts at this on the range in sessions, so I know it's good fun. Start behind the ball. Once our hands get above our waist, we're going to step forwards and then just swing through. And you can sort of see that I've got my hips, by the time I get to the top of the swing, are forward of where they would start. I've shifted my weight before I've got to the top of the swing, and from here I just need to turn and whip it through. So the second drill I really like is one that I did a lot growing up when I was trying to get my swing somewhat correct away from the horrible over the top slice that I sort of was born with for some reason. And this is one where you stop halfway back, so you're going to make your first move, get to sort of that halfway back position, and you're going to freeze, and you're just going to check, right, are my hands in line with my bicep? Is that shaft too flat or just right? Have I made a hip turn? Have I got a good shoulder turn? And if you can check those things off, then you're just going to turn and hit it. I really like that one because it's a real pain to do. No one finds those pause drills fun, but if you can just get used to making that good move, checking your points and turning and hitting it, what you'll find is you'll actually pause for a shorter amount of time. If you're just new to working on this, you're probably going to pause for quite a long time to go, right, hand depth, shaft pitch, have I got enough turn? But you'll quickly move into, right, this is what it feels like to make a good move. Yep, looks good, and then go. And over time, that pause will get shorter and shorter and shorter until you know what that position feels like. So the final drill is going to help you work on your backswing. Would normally be done against the wall, but this time because we're outside on a practice ground, we're going to do it with a stick. And what you're going to do is stick the stick in the ground just behind your rear heel. And what you're going to do is swing back and get a feel for, right, I need to get my hands to that stick. I need to get the hands and then my arm back to create some depth. If you're a player who doesn't get enough hand depth or fans the club and gets that flat shaft, your arms are going to get nowhere near that stick, and that's going to cause us problems in hand depth and shaft pitch. Just swinging back to that stick and then swinging down, what you can see as I do that is I'm going to get my hands working deeper, more in from the first move, which is then, like I said, it's going to set us up to get into a better position at the top and then allow us to swing down and hit it from a good place. We have been through quite a lot there, you know, why we need a good backswing, the faults that we see in the backswing, what a good backswing looks like, and then some drills. Hopefully you can see the importance of why we need a good backswing and why, if you're a mid to high handicapper, it's important that we get that backswing right, because if we don't, we're just relying on compensations, and as a player who doesn't practice loads and isn't a full-timer and maybe isn't the most athletic or coordinated, it helps to be in a good place because it then allows us to just swing down a bit more naturally, and we're not making all those compensations.